What's up, guys? My name is Skulls, and I want to discuss the Halo 5 beta. And I know the video looks long, and I know not everyone has time to sit down and watch an hour-long video. And I want to make it clear to everyone that there are timestamps for everything I'm going to be discussing in the description of this video. So if you have something specific you want to hear me talk about, or you want to, you only have time to listen to a couple of the topics, then feel free to hop around on the video at your leisure. What I'm going to be talking about today is pretty much everything about the Halo 5 beta. My personal thoughts, which is going to include my personal bias, obviously, but also some more objective stuff and how it relates to the Halo 5's release will relate to the entire Halo community. Things I'm going to be discussing, specifically mechanics, things like sprint and thrust. I'm going to discuss all the weapons in brief detail. I'm going to discuss all of the maps, the game types, the interface, like control schemes, ranking systems, and the menu itself. And I'm going to end with a little bit of a conclusion and a wrap-up period. So to get right into it, I think I want to discuss the mechanics first, because that's something that's on everyone's mind, and that's something that I think when you get down to what people are really interested in and what people are talking about on the forums, it's the mechanical stuff in the game. The sprint, the thrust, how grenades react, physics in general, stabilize, new stuff. And I think what I want to talk about first is sprint, because it's pretty heavily debated, and how I always have felt about sprint in Halo, for me personally, is that I don't ever want sprint in Halo. I don't like sprint in Halo, and I'm never going to want it in the game. That being said, I do entertain the possibility that it can be successfully implemented into a Halo game, and that Halo can have a game with sprint in it. I don't believe that Halo 5 is that game, and I think that they tried to balance it, and what they had on paper for their balance, probably looked pretty good. But in actuality, I don't see their sprint balancing to be nearly as effective as they thought it would. I think people still sprint as much as they would with or without the shield recharge inhibitor, and I don't see what the point was of including that if it wasn't going to deter people from sprinting. The idea had merit, and I think that's where I'm at with that, is that it looked good on paper, like I said, but overall, I think sprint for me personally, it's already so easy to get away in the first place, and I think this game without sprint and smaller maps would have been a much better and much more viable option for a number of reasons, because when you sprint, you have to expand maps, and I think map size is something that for me really kills competitive play, it kills casual play, and in general I think it makes the game boring. But I think my biggest problem overall with sprint is that because of the balance, because of the recharge inhibitor on your shield, if you run away from a battle, what do? You you run and you hide in a corner so that you can get your shields back, and you're out. You're usually crouching, and so I think sprinting promotes running from battles, and it promotes being a passive player, and I think it also promotes camping and sitting in corners, which is something that I feel is not indicative of Halo. And I think thrust really operates in the same way. I think thrust, to me right now, is the single biggest problem in this game for a number of reasons. And to kind of couple that, I think sprint and thrust are really something that you have to discuss together. And I think combining sprint with thrust when you're running away from a battle or running away from a player, it's simply too easy to get away, and that's the first problem I have with it. And moreover than that, I think thrust really has become a panic button for a lot of players, and I thrust a lot. It's not like I didn't want to use thrust. I use thrust a lot, and it saves my life a lot in situations where in every other Halo I would have died. Even in Halo 4, using their thrust mechanic, I probably still would have died. And I don't like that. I don't like this concept of a panic button being in Halo, because all it does is promote, it generates random gameplay. It leaves a lot of things. It basically turns battles into toss-ups, and I don't think that should ever be in any FPS, and I don't think it should be in Halo. And I kind of see thrust functioning, for those of you who play fighting games like Tekken or Street Fighter, the best characters, the top tier characters, and even some low tier characters, they generally have one move that's just it's called a panic move, like I just said. and you use it, and it's just a toss up. You gamble, and you're doing max damage on Tekken or whatever, and there's no skill to using it. You're just hoping and praying that it works, that it bails you out, and that's all thrust is to me, is a bailout. And I think to talk about them together, like I was saying, sprint and thrust, what does that do overall for Halo? And I think for me personally, I've always grown up playing Halo, learning to stand your ground and not running. And I think that's a staple of CE, is that if you get caught in bad spawns, you can't just run away and hope that the problem's going to go away. You have to do as much damage so that when you inevitably get killed, your teammate spawns and he can pick up a kill and get one down and try and force some spawns elsewhere, or get the double kill, or move somewhere else. It's all about doing a lot of damage, and I think that Halo 2 is no different. When you commit to a battle in Halo 2, particularly on maps like Warlock and Midship, I think it's more important to see them through to the end rather than just running away. And I think obviously baiting and switching is a big part of Halo 2, not so much as Halo 3, for example. But I think generally the concepts behind Halo 2 on all levels are that you stand your ground and you do as much damage as possible, and in the hopes that you get the kill, or one of your teammates will come in and help you get the kill. And all sprint and thrust do is promote, like I said, this really passive style of play. It makes it okay to be in the wrong position at the wrong time. It makes it okay to not have to commit to a battle. It makes it okay to turn and run away. It makes it okay for you to basically play like a bitch, and I don't like that. And I think for me, as a Halo player, I've always stood my ground. I've always tried to be a man. If I've engaged in a battle, I commit to the battle and see it through to the end. And I think that was, that's always been a staple of Halo to me. And maybe not so much in games like Reach and Halo 3, but even Halo 3 to a certain extent, where there's obviously a lot of baiting and switching, and you have a completely unreliable BR because of spread and projectile-based weaponry. But I've still seen big players go huge with the battle rifle and make these huge individual plays because you still have that 4-shot power. And there were plenty of situations on the map or whatever that led to individual one-on-one battles, and that's going to be something that I'm going to talk about later when I discuss maps. Overall, I think this is really bad for Halo. And I don't expect the game to stay true to its roots. I knew that. But there were a few core things about Halo that I feel should always be in Halo, and this was definitely one of them, the idea of being a confident Halo player. I think that's something that traditionally we've always seen, and I don't think we have that anymore. But to move on, I want to talk about nade physics as well, because that's something that I feel has plagued the franchise for many, many years, really since Reach came out. And we've seen changes in grenades before. We saw like from CE to Halo 2 where there was a huge damage scale and a huge distance throwing scale as well. I'm not a stranger to nade changes in the slightest, but I think that in Reach we saw a really sharp change. I think the dynamics increased greatly, the physics of the actual grenades themselves, how they react when you throw them off surfaces and how far you can throw them certainly took a very, very huge hit. And, being a Halo 2 player, I play a lot of midship FFA. And so being able to easily plant grenades and having these surfaces that aren't very reactive, they're very reliable. And when you bank a grenade off a certain surface or a certain angle on a map, you know what you're getting out of that. And I feel like we've gotten farther and farther away from that since Halo Reach with Halo Reach and Halo 4. And I think Halo 5 we're even farther away from predictable nade mechanics. And I think that goes down to the physics ramping. I feel like if I drop a grenade on the floor, it's going to bounce 20 feet in the air. And those type of super reactive physics, I feel do the same thing as thrust, and that's promote randomness. And having all these different surfaces, I feel like I just have a much harder time throwing reliable grenades as opposed to a game like Halo 1 or Halo 2 or Halo 3. Really, the original trilogy was the last time I was firmly satisfied with how grenades worked. And to add to that, and I just alluded to this talking about some sort of map stuff, but I think my biggest problem with nades is that you can't throw them as far, and simply because the maps are so big, not having that cleanup power, not having that pressure power, challenging the other side of the map with grenades just doesn't exist anymore. And I think that's really evident to me on a map like Truth, where you simply can't reach other players with damage, and it's just it turns everything into a standoff, and that's something I'm going to talk about more later. but I certainly believe that the grenade throwing distance does a lot to exacerbate that issue for me. To talk about some new stuff, I think Stabilize is oh, actually, I did want to cover just one more thing on nades. It's too easy to avoid nade damage because you have thrust, you have sprint, you can hover with ground and pound, you can hover with stabilize. I think nades, ultimately, the entire meta surrounding grenades is completely useless in Halo 5, and that's something else that I wanted to touch on. But to move on to Stabilize, I think Stabilize is a new mechanic that is a little bit broken in the sense that if you've wanted to run away, it's let me rephrase that. I think Stabilize looks good on paper, like I do with a lot of this stuff. I think I like it in the standpoint that if you're running away, if a player's running away and you're chasing after them, it gives you a little bit of an extra angle to, and in certain scenarios, to get that extra killing power on someone who's turned their back on you, which is something that I personally agree with. That being said, I think it's a pretty shitty mechanic for newer players because Stabilize is default on, and so when you jump and then press your ADS button and you're hovering in midair, I don't think that's a mechanic that's very friendly to new players, and I think that's a mechanic that's going to burn a lot of new players. To talk more about the beginner side of the game or the casual side of the game, and that's not something I agree with. And overall, I think being able in situations like with a sniper rifle where you're at an angle where if you jump you can shoot someone, to be able to stabilize and hover in midair and line your shot up is something that I certainly feel takes away a little bit of skill, and I'm going to talk about the sniper more in depth here when I cover weapons. But I think Stabilize is really a double-edged sword. There are things I like about it, and there are things that I don't like about it. And I think ground and pound is kind of the same way. I view ground and pound really as a useless mechanic. Overall, even though I have seen some people do it, and I think why I like ground and pound is because it's an embarrassing thing to do to someone, and that's something that I feel should always be in Halo. You should be able to completely embarrass someone. You should be able to take someone's lunch money and to use an analogy. And I think that's what ground and pound is for me. It's a way to say fuck you to other players. But other than that, I think it's incredibly unreliable, and I think the damage on it is finicky, and I think the radius, the farther you get from your ground and pound radius, the amount of damage you're doing is unreliable, and I think it needs to be rescaled. And really overall, there's just no way to use it in high-level competitive play, and that's obviously something that I think about as well. I don't see this being an incredibly useful mechanic in the slightest, and I think it's just one of those things that they saw. Destiny had the Titan where you can do your Titan Smash, and I think that's really how they got this idea, and that's going to be a theme throughout this video, is that you just kind of took ideas from other FPSs and tried to make them your own. Overall, I don't think ground and pound should be in this game, and I don't see the merit in adding it in the first place other than trying to keep up with other FPSs. And one more thing about ground and pound, I thought its unintended uses, like being able to ground and pound hover, like if you're in a corner like right here, and this is the corner right here, and you get naded, you can jump and then hold your ground and pound, and you kind of hover for a second and avoid a little bit of the grenade damage, which is something that I referred to when I was talking about grenades. Those little unintended uses, being the Halo player that I am, especially with Halo 2, finding things that and using things that not as intended is something that I've always really cherished as a Halo player. And I thought in that regard it was pretty cool to kind of outmaneuver some people, and just jump trapping in general, which is something I've done on Destiny. Like if you have double or triple jump, if you're waiting for someone to come around, and you just kind of jump in the corner and you hover as long as possible in the hopes that they believe you're down here, and you can kind of get first shot on them, which is something that you guys may or may not be familiar with, but. That was one of the merits that I found pretty beneficial concerning ground and pound. And I'm not going to call it ground pound. I'm going to call it ground and pound because I think ground pound sounds stupid. Like a lot of these other names that they give their stupid random abilities. But one thing I wanted to cover that's not necessarily a mechanic, but is something that people talk about, and I think it relates to a lot to... actually, you know what? I'm going to save that. I'm going to talk about that for map movement because I think that relates more heavily to that rather than mechanics. I'm going to move on to the weapons now, and I think in general, to speak generally about the weapons, there were a few things I noticed, and I think that the first thing for me was that I can't see the guns when they're on the ground. I can't see guns when they're up on spawn. They're really, and I don't know if it's the colors, I don't know if it's the saturation, I don't know if it's the 60 FPS, But compared to other Halo games, I can barely see guns on the ground, and that's problematic for me. And I think another big problem I had with the overall gun palette was it was more of a mechanical thing in the regards to the switch times. I feel like switching from gun to gun is something that traditionally in Halo has been very fast, and in some Halos like Halo 2, it's been exceptionally fast. Excuse me, but that's always been kind of a staple of the franchise to me. That now we have this clunky like pull out time, and the guns are really unresponsive after you switch. And overall, I just feel like that really slows down gameplay. I feel like it slows down the individual, which is something I'm not a fan of, obviously. And I think it's really troublesome for me as a Halo player. That's something I really hope changes, because I think weapon switching has always been something that we've taken for granted as Halo players, because we've always had good weapon switch times. And to not have that anymore, I think it should open a lot of people's eyes as to the direction that Halo is headed. But to talk about the weapons specifically, and I'll cover a lot of them, or if not all of them, I want to talk about the SMG first, because I actually really enjoyed the SMG. And approaching this game, hearing about the Halo 5 beta, I was against automatics that could compete, because I've always, I'm a Halo player, and I'm used to having precision weapons be top dog, always. You have the pistol in CE, the BR in Halo 2, the BR in Halo 3, the DMR in Halo Reach, the BR and DMR in Halo 4. I'm so used to having those things be top dog, and when I heard about the overpowered AR, which is something that I'll talk about, I worried about how automatic weapons would affect this game. But I think I really enjoyed using the SMG, and I think as a utility weapon, it spawns in the right places, and it's got use in certain places, and I think it's something worth keeping in your back pocket. And I thought it functioned as intended, which is something that I wasn't expecting. I think the AR is a little less balanced, and people have been calling the AR overpowered, and I don't think that unbalanced and overpowered mean the same thing, and I don't think that the AR is overpowered, because we all start with one in Gametypes. And I think trying to say that someone's AR is better than another person's AR inherently is a stupid statement. I think that the damage does need to be scaled back by 1 or 2 points. I think it does compete a little too easily at longer ranges, and because one thing either needs to happen: the spread needs to widen at longer ranges, or the damage just needs to be scaled back a little bit. And I think that's something that they've experimented with in Halo 4, and something that they obviously did with their weapons in Halo 4. So I know that's achievable, at least. So I'm hoping for a tiny bit of a damage scale, but nothing too substantial. Overall, I thought the AR was practical, and I like that, because the maps, and that's why the AR is so strong, is because you have AR starts, and the maps are so huge, and if you don't have a strong AR, then the game is just going to be so fucking boring. It's just going to be people running around shooting each other to no effect, and then ultimately getting in close and having this random melee thruster fuckfest. So I think that's the logic behind it, and I certainly hope that it does get scaled just a tiny bit. To talk about weapons I actually care about, I thought the battle rifle was pretty smooth in this game, and I noticed a couple things about it. Is that the hit scan on it is really generous, and the magnetism is also really, really generous in this game. And I've played some games where I've had to have precision damage to get perfect kills. I've had to have my cursor has had to be exactly on their head or upper, lower neck area to get the kills. And I think I've also played on hosts where I magnetize very hard, like I'll be shooting here or here or here or here, and still am getting rewarded with headshots. And I think that's something that needs to change, because I think it's something I didn't talk about in the mechanics, which I probably should have. Is I think the strafe movement in this game is incredibly weak. And I think that's counteracted by a lack of auto aim. But when your gun magnetizes like the BR does, it basically throws everything out the window and makes you, a better player than you should be, I guess is the way to say it. And I think that the BR would stand from having less magnetism. And I don't know if that was an intended mechanic that they put on the battle rifle, or something that happened accidentally. You never really know when you're talking about 343, but. Overall, I think the BR is fun to use, because it does have, the shot time is fast, and And when you're in an individual battle, which is, you know, exceptionally rare on this game, it is incredibly rewarding to get the perfect kill medal on someone. I think that's something that also works both ways, though, that because the BR is so fast, shot times are absolutely faster than ever, and I think this is probably the fastest kill times we're going to see since Halo CE. And that's troublesome because this game does not play anything like CE. The framework of competitive CE and casual CE is really, you know, it's focused around having these isolated battles and not just being able to shoot people from anywhere on the map at any time, which is what we have with Halo 5. So I'm certainly worried about the overwhelming team power that the BR brings to the table, but I think another thing I wanted to discuss just before I move on is that I think we're at the point now as a Halo community to where BR starts should be a thing. I think your average Halo player is much better than he was 10 years ago. I think kids are growing up playing FPSs as opposed to, you know, pick this. You know, Halo 2 was people's first FPS. Halo 3 was people's first FPS. And now we have a whole era of gamers that have grown up on Halo, and I think that we're growing up on Halo and Call of Duty. And I think we're past the scrubby AR starts. I think it's time to move into full BR starts. And that's going to upset a lot of people. I know that may not be a very popular opinion. But I just think that the maps are so big in this game, to not start with a BR or a precision weapon is something that I think that's asking for people to just not enjoy your game. Because really, what happens when you don't start with BRs, because the maps are so big, you're basically rushing to get precision weapons, and whoever gets the precision weapons first gets map control first, and really maintains control for the whole game if they know what they're doing. And that's why, that's kind of why I feel that way. To move on, though, I think the DMR. You know, I don't understand why the DMR is also in this game. I've only ever needed one precision weapon, and I didn't need two in Halo 4, and we saw what. You know, having two really good precision rifles from the human sandbox it just created this needless competition, and there was a lot of angst about that. I don't like the DMR in this game simply for that reason. I think BR should always be top dog in games that have BRs. So that being said, I thought the functionality of the DMR did differ from the BR in the sense that it was more reliable at super long ranges, and that's due to a couple things: the cursor, the ADS range. So I thought as a utility weapon, yes, the DMR did certainly work at longer ranges, but it's a little bit overpowered in the sense that if you do have a good shot, you can outshoot people very easily in the shot times on it without bloom, which is something I never thought I would say, that the bloom actually kind of balanced the DMR. But I think it can be OP in certain situations. To move on, I think the sword, I don't know why it's in the game. I don't know why we're in 2015 and we have a game with sprint and thrust, and we have a weapon mechanic like a sword that actually makes you run faster as well. And that's just, it just bothers me. And I think we're at the point now where we need to leave the sword in the past, and we need to come up with a close range melee weapon. Which is, you know, that's not just a staple of Halo. You look at games traditionally like Unreal Tournament, Unreal Championship, Quake. They all have that. You know, they all have that kind of, you know, close range melee primary or whatever. But I think where I'm at right now is that the sword just needs to die. I think its time has come and gone, and I think it's time to experiment with something else. And that's all I really have to say about it. It's just worthless. And you know, against bad kids, it's easy to run around in circles on truth and get a ton of kills, and you know, like I guess that makes it fun. But like, because of the weapon switch time especially, I don't think it as a utility weapon, as far as something as keeping it in your back pocket, which is what we've seen in competitive Halo 3 on Heretic, and something we saw in competitive Halo 2 on maps like Lockout, is that you keep it in your back pocket and you pull it out when you need to. And that mechanic, because of the weapon switch times, is completely useless, and I think by extension it makes the sword useless as well. But like I said, overall, I think it's time to come up with something new here, boys. But that might just be me. I think we milked the sword long enough, and I think it's time to you know, lay it to rest. To talk about the sniper, I think we have really another Halo 4 sniper, and I was hopeful when I saw Halo 2 Anniversary sniper, which, you know, shoots fast. It's a lot more low profile. I was gonna hope that we were gonna come back to a less clanky, a less toaster-like sniper rifle, to take the words out of a buddy's mouth, but we don't have that. We still have slow shot times, a sniper that takes up half of your screen, and a precision weapon, a power weapon that I just don't find enjoyment using. And I think that comes down to a lot of things. And A big thing I was hoping to be fixed that really only relates to the sniper rifle is needing headshot damage even when someone is partial, and that's something that we haven't seen since Halo 2. That changed in Halo 3. And I thought that was a good way to balance the shot time and magnetism in Halo 2, was that you were required to have a headshot even if the person was an inch over no shield. So that's something I was hoping was in this game, but whatever. To talk about the rocket launcher, I'm glad there's a two-barrel launcher in this game, and I think that I heard that there wasn't going to be one, so to have one in here is obviously is welcome. I think the rockets shoot slower than ever, and I think overall this gun is not as powerful as I would like it to be. And I think coming from Halo C and Halo 2, which is what I've been playing, pretty exclusively for the past couple years, I want the OP rockets. I want the Halo 1 rockets where you can fucking shoot, you can shoot a rocket and blow someone up a fucking mile away. I like the OP-ness of them. That's why they're called power weapons. That's why Halo 2 rockets are so good. That's why they're important to the game. That's why they're integral. And I don't find myself absolutely needing rockets when they come up in this game. And I think that what's the point of having a power weapon if it's not really a power weapon anymore? And I think the Hydra is the same way. It's like a plasma cannon from Reach mixed with the sticky det from Halo 4 mixed in with the rocket launcher from Halo 3, and I think it's just like it's this mongrel weapon, and I don't like it at all, and I don't find the merit in it. It's particularly for competitive play, and I think on a casual level or a basic level, it's not even that fun to use anyways. It's fucking cumbersome, it's boring, and it just doesn't work that well. And I think that's... Oh, actually, I forgot to talk about the Pro Pistol, which, the pistol you keep in your back pocket. I thought this was actually the best gun in the game. Not as far as power or utility by any means, but I think for me, I had the most fun using the pistol because it was a good way to balance out the AR starts, having that pistol that can compete with BRs at medium to longer ranges, and it certainly can outshoot ARs at the medium to longer ranges. Having that in your back pocket was something that was good. I wish it maintained a little more power at more extreme distances, but overall having something in your back pocket that can compete with BRs and stuff is something that I certainly found merit in and something that I enjoyed using, and it's always very fun to get perfect kills with that. I think that's all the weapons, and I think overall where I'm at with the guns is that this was actually my biggest letdown for Halo 5, because if there was one thing I really enjoyed about Halo 4, it was some of the new guns that they had, and I think while they weren't always executed perfectly, things like the sticky detonator were fun to use, and they had purpose and they had utility. And I think the railgun was the same way. It had a purpose, it had a degree of skill to it, and it had a utility to it. And I was really hopeful to see what 343 would do new with this, and obviously there's still hope for the actual game that they didn't show us everything, which I hope is the case. But I was a little bit let down by something like the Hydra, which was a new gun, which was, I felt, just an absolute piece of dog shit. But you know what? Whatever. One more closing note before I move on from weapons is what I was talking about. I want power weapons to be power weapons. I want there to be a reason to go get these power weapons, and you're going to see why when I discuss map movement next. But power weapons are supposed to be overpowered. That's the point of an arena-style shooter, is that you get power-ups, you get guns, and then you power up like a fucking Dragon Ball Z character and go and kill a lot of people. And I'm going to talk more about that later, but I didn't really get that vibe from here. I feel like even though we don't have loadouts, they're still trying to make everything very, very Call of Duty balanced, which is stupid. But to talk about maps and map movement, this is another very, very, very big point of contention for me. I didn't like any of the maps at all. I think really the only ones I liked playing were Regret and Eden, which were the Week 2 maps, and the main problem I have is really an extension of what I was just talking about. There's no reason to move around on these maps, and I think that because they're so big, that flanking is nearly impossible. Flanking in a timely fashion is nearly impossible, and that's due to sprint and map size. But overall, I think every single map is just one giant standoff, and really, I don't see any characteristics that really force people to go somewhere. And even when the weapons spawn, it's like I don't even want to use the rocket launcher, so I'm not even going to go get it. I'm just going to go there to try and contest the other team. And it's just like nothing promotes map movement anymore, which that was the lifeblood of Halo since its inception. You move around the map because you have to, maybe not because you want to use the rockets, which if you don't, you're stupid. But like in CE, you had to at least make an attempt to deny the opponents the rockets. You're always moving because stuff is always coming up, and every part of every map in that game is getting utilized, whether it be for spawns or whether it be for a power up or a power position. Everything in Halo CE was perfect in the sense that there was no negative space, and you were constantly moving, trying to guess your opponent's moves while simultaneously trying to get position for an OS or for camo. And obviously the game mechanics are very different, but even Halo 2 to a certain extent, even though it had weapon respawn times on drop, there were certainly reasons to move around that map, and I think that was because you had insane individual power, and you could challenge maps. You could challenge map parts like P2 and win one or two individual battles to regain control. There's always been a big reason to move, and yes, there are maps like standoffs. There are maps that become standoffs, and that's been a tradition in Halo, and you see that in CE to a certain extent, and you really see it in Halo 2 with a map like Lockout or a map like Sanctuary Slayer, where you're basically fixing your spawns to one base. And if you're down, no one's moving unless you have a sniper. And I think Halo 3 is something that also is plagued with one or two maps that are like that. But you inevitably have something that comes up that forces movement and induces movement and forces people to compete with each other. And I think the Pit is a really great example of that from Halo 3, especially in MLG gameplay, is that at 44 or 45 kills, that game absolutely slows down. That game becomes one giant standoff, and no one will die for a minute and a half or 2 minutes. And then rockets come up, and then your snipers coming up, and OS is coming up, and like you have a combination of these things that are coming up. And while you may be in a standoff for a little bit, once those things start coming up, it's basically a scramble, and you'll get the next 5 or 6 kills in about 20 seconds. And so you do have a standoff, but it's balanced in the sense that there's the promise of movement later on. You know, I think some of the most exciting Halo 3 games I ever watched, certainly going back to when Warriors beat Triggers Down for 5th, I believe. That was really the best example. It's like it turns into this big standoff, and then the OS comes up, and then the sniper comes up, and then Goofy's pushing, and he's on their side of the map, and he picks up the quickscope on Hysteria. Those are the exciting plays that I feel are going to be non-existent in Halo 5 from a competitive standpoint. And what it comes down to for me is map movement. There's no reason to do anything anymore, and I think a map like Truth, to talk about Truth specifically, is that it's just so fucking big. And this is really where, when I was discussing grenades, and if you didn't watch my part on grenades, you should definitely watch it after listening to this. Truth is a map that's so big that you're basically just sitting on one side of the map with your teammates trying to pick people off, and the only problem is that you can't put pressure on the other team with grenades because the map areas are so big. Like if you're in car 2 or car 3, you can see grenades coming, you can evade them easily, you're not doing a lot of damage, and people aren't dying. And if people aren't dying, then people aren't having a reason to push. Because if you're just sitting off and it's just a 4v4, you get one down, you go to push and you have to cover miles, and on the maps are so open that you're just getting fucking pelted with shots, and you're inevitably going to die. And that's another reason why, if you didn't watch my part on the BR, you should watch that as well, is that team shotting is simply too powerful for the maps that we have right now, and I really think that needs to change. No one wants to move because no one wants to get cleaned up, and so people hide under cover, and they don't die in that cover because nades aren't doing any damage, and you can't see, and there's so much space around you that you can move into evade damage that it's just a bad scene overall. And I thought Truth was the absolute worst map in this game, other than the second Forge map, for a variety of reasons. My biggest problem, though, is that on our BR arena-based maps, our symmetrical maps, we've always had nade damage that can be done across the map. We had it on midship. We had it on Warlock. If you hold P2 midship, you are gonna get naded out eventually. It's just a reality. And if you watch top pro players play that game, if you watch VOD from Halo 2, one of the first things people do in games is fucking spawn and throw a nade into P2, and that's just good practice. And that's something that I feel is completely lacking on a map like Truth, where you just have these, like car 3, or I guess it's car 2 now, it's just one giant stronghold. And trying to challenge it is just fucking stupid, as opposed to a game like Halo 2, where 1 or 2 players could defeat 2 or 3 players at the power position. And that's all I'm going to say about Truth. I just thought it was a very shitty map. And I thought Empire was a little bit better in the sense that there was more of a reason to move, but again, there was a lot of negative space. Almost no one's ever in bottom mid, and bottom mid traditionally is something that there's been negative benefits to being bottom mid, but because there's so much shit, you just kind of run around and you run in a figure eight around the fucking pillars, and you kind of stay alive. As opposed to go back to Halo 2, as opposed to a map like Midship, where you can see bottom mid from every power. You can see it from really well from both parts. From both bases. You can see it from car 3, from car 2, from P2, from P3. You really have an angle on bottom mid from everywhere, and you're gonna get fucking punished if you're down there. And I didn't get that vibe from Empire in the slightest. I thought the biggest problem with this map was 2 snipers spawning. If you have outside control, there's no reason to move inside to get that sniper, because outside to me was a better part of that map. And I think if you're inside and you're trying to get outside, you're waiting for your sniper, and then you're sitting in the inside still waiting for your sniper to get the pick on their sniper. And it's just like, I think this map is made 100% better by putting rockets inside on the inside sniper spawn, and then having something like a shotgun or a sword at bottom mid, just to kind of induce a little movement and make people more aware of that area on the map. But overall, I didn't think it was that bad. And actually, one of my favorite maps was certainly the nighttime version of that, Eden. I thought because of the solo sword and sniper spawns, even though I would have liked to see sniper continue to spawn outside and sword spawn directly in the middle of the map inside. I thought Eden did a good job of inducing a little more map movement. I thought the balconies and the walkways certainly provided areas for cover enough to where you could engage in individual battles, which was something that I'm obviously a very, very big fan of. And really, I just thought, having good angles and having knowledgeable angles and knowing when and where you can shoot people is something that's really been a staple of Halo, particularly in Halo 2 and Halo 3. And I think that's something that Eden does very well, is that there are a lot of angles that you need to be aware of. And overall, that was one of my more favorite maps to play. And I think Regret was, overall probably my favorite one to play, just because it was a symmetrical map that was, small enough to where the BR competed at all ranges, and it was fun to use. And I thought map movement was still not perfect on this, and I think that really comes down to having top mid being so well protected, and really still having these giant areas like in Car 2 and P2. You just have these big areas where you can move around and avoid all the damage. And as long as you're being aware, then you're not going to get killed in individual battles, which is just stupid. But overall, I really like that. I like that they had the rockets spawning bottom mid, and I think that was certainly something that induced movement, that suggested that people needed to be somewhere, at least to cover their teammates or something. I didn't like the Hydra spawn on this map. I think the Hydra's a worthless gun. That's something I talked about when I covered that. But I thought Regret was actually a pretty solid map. To get into the Forge maps, I thought both Forge maps were garbage. I thought Pegasus was incredibly unbalanced and inevitably turns into a stalemate between high and low spawns, which is like, every map that's designed like that is going to turn into that eventually, and I don't know why people are still forging maps like that, but that's just me. The second Forge map, I don't know what the name is for it. I don't have anything to say about it, except for I turn 25 tomorrow. My birthday's on the 22nd. In the 25 years all I've been gaming, community-made, self-made, skate parks on THPS, any game, any map made by anyone, stock, DLC, this is the worst map I have ever played in the history of gaming. Ever. End of story, and that's all I have to say about it. And I find it incredibly ironic that game developers can't use, the map makers can't use the Forge system that's been created by their company to make maps that actually work. Just, this shit kind of blows my mind. But to move on and discuss maps and to kind of sum up the maps, there's just not enough on here. And I think what we're going to see on low levels of play, and casual levels of play, and mid to low levels, is that people are just going to run around, and it's just going to be one random battle after the next with no really specific location driving movement or no specific goal driving movement, which is something that we've usually had even in more casual scenarios, that people want to get the power weapons, people want to be in this place, people know where the power positions are, and they're going to go there. And you see that in a game like Halo 3, where if you play the pit, people always want to be on sniper tower, people are always going to challenge you on sniper tower, even if you're playing multi-team. That's just the reality, because people know that's where you want to be. And like I think we don't have any of that in these maps, and I think competitively this game is doomed for that reason, because of team shotting and nade physics and all that stuff that I've already talked about. You're basically gonna have just fucking Revolutionary War era playstyles where, especially on a map like Truth, you're just gonna line up and shoot at each other and pray that you don't get hit enough times to die. And it's gonna be like literally just two fucking walls of players just shooting at each other and then backing up and hiding and then coming back out and shooting at each other. And you know, that's just not competitive Halo to me, and I don't think that ever will be. And that's all I have to say about the maps. I want to talk about the game types now, because I think it's something worth talking about. And I think in general, the two new game types that we saw, Strongholds and Breakout, are not that great. And I feel it's worth pointing out that I think Extraction needs to be in Halo 5, and I thought that one of the shining lights in Halo 4, competitively and casually, was Extraction. I thought that was a great game type. I thought the Extraction games were fun to watch on Station 9 and Haven, and I thought they were things that induce map movement. And I thought Extraction was a really great addition to the game types competitively and casually. And I don't feel the same about Strongholds, and I feel like Strongholds was supposed to be an answer to Call of Duty's game types like Headquarters and Domination, which are very popular and very easy to play, very easy to understand, and very addicting. And you know, if you go play Call of Duty, what are you clicking on? You're clicking on Domination first, you know. And overall, I think Strongholds ultimately fails because the premise around it is holding two parts of the map, and that's how you score. And the problem is that if you're holding those two parts of the map on a Slayer, you're gonna win anyways. That's where you want to be. If you're playing on Regret, you want to be up there on Car. You want to be, you want to have partial control of a base, and you kind of want to string your players out like you do on Midship in Halo 2, and kind of deal with pressure over here, team shoot, deal with pressure over here, and like that's how you win the game anyways. You win games on Empire by kind of doing the exact same thing. You want to be aware of the base. You want to have semi-base control, so you know if a flank's coming, and you want to have outside control and know where everyone is, and kind of shoot where you can. It's like basically playing a Slayer, and it's just if you're playing with good Slayer habits in Strongholds, it's basically the exact same game type. I don't see how that game type has any worth to me. And Breakout, it's really the same thing. It's like their answer to S&D or more classic realistic shooters like CS. The only problem is that Breakout is a Slayer game type, and the only reason that elimination game types work in a game like Call of Duty, Search and Destroy, to be specific, or a game like Counter-Strike, is that you have an OBJ to induce movement, and I think ultimately what I've seen playing the little Breakout that I have is that everyone rushes, then one or two kills happen, and everyone runs back to their side of the map. It's just like, one or two people die, then people are just hiding, and that's not the point of elimination game types. The point of elimination game types is to come up with a strategy as a team, win individual battles like you do on Counter-Strike, and you see a lot of individual one-on-one battles in Counter-Strike, and that's how you move as a team. That's how you play as a team. It's based on individual merit and individual shot, individual awareness, individual presence. That's how all strategies work, is you inevitably have one weak spot where one player is watching one side or one player is watching one angle, and if he doesn't win that battle, then people are coming in, and that's there's nothing like that to drive movement and to drive teamwork. It's just it's basically hide and seek, which is less than worthless, because I'd rather play hide and seek on Halo 2, which is actually fun, which is whatever. And Slayer, I think it's worth pointing out that I'm glad that respawn times are a default thing in Slayer, and that's all I really want to say about Slayer. Is I'm glad to have this game type be restored to more of its former glory, at least compared to Halo 4. So I think things are obviously things can always be worse. And to talk about the interface, I did want to cover a couple things. And I guess I'll just include Jeff in this because I was supposed to talk about something that I forgot to. But I think overall the interface is laggy and buggy, and I don't think that's anything that's going to be in Halo 5. At least I hope not. I think what we saw was a beta, and I think we should not expect that from a finished product. But yeah, who knows with 343 really? But one thing I thought was worth pointing about general stuff is that the controls, there's only one or two button schemes that compete to me, and I think that's bumper, jumper, and fish stick. And for those of you who don't know what fish stick is, it's classic Call of Duty controls where crouch is B, right trigger shoot, left trigger is ADS, and that's what I personally played on for my almost entirely on for the beta, and I had a great time doing it. And I think this game obviously feels more like Call of Duty than it does Halo to a lot of people. And I think that's good. I think that's like Halo 2, where you were playing default or boxer, or default claw and boxer at high levels, and they were really the only two button layouts that you saw. Occasionally you would see a southpaw, but like not like you do in 2009, 2010 when a lot of people are playing southpaw. But having kind of those one to two bona fide control schemes that are stand above the rest is something that I liked. I was really disappointed to not have a no vibe option because I'm a no vibe player and I have been since around 2008. And I don't understand how as a developer you can miss such a core thing about your control schemes or setting layouts. And it bothered me for the whole beta, and I think it bothered a lot of people, and just alienating 30 to 40%, that's a rough estimation. Alienating so many people who play on no vibe from the beginning was a really, really big mistake that I feel is worth pointing out. I thought the ranking system was a little too progressive for what we need as a console FPS, and I think certainly calling the ranks pro and semi-pro have led to many a big head and led to many a streamer calling themselves professional players now, which is something I was not a huge fan of. I think overall the ranking system works if you have a really, 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 really big base of player, and I don't think we had that for the beta, and I don't know if we'll have that for the finished product. I think having something more similar to the tier system in Black Ops 2, where you have your semi-pro instead of having the you still have points and everything, but if you're like say you're gold tier in Black Ops 2, you get put into a section for gold, and you're competing against 200 other players to move up into platinum. And I think having those having leaderboards within each tier is something that I thought would have worked a lot better. And I'm not really doing the Black Ops 2 ranking system justice, but I did think it was really on point, and I thought it was more easy to see your progress, and I thought more dedicated players were more rewarded overall. But you know what? Hopefully that changes. And I think one thing I needed to talk about is Jeff, is the announcer. He just constantly fucking talking in this game, and that's not something I like. And I don't like that there's a BXR medal in this fucking game, for example. Like, was it necessary? Is it necessary to do that? And it just bothers the fuck out of me, to be honest with you, to have something like that in the game. That being said, the one thing I wanted to talk about that I did fail to discuss when I said I would was having people announce when weapon timers are coming up. And before I got really into CE on the Master Chief Collection, I was all out on that. I was no way do I want that in the game. But after playing a game like CE, where even at remotely competitive levels, everyone is timing and everyone knows when everything is coming up, I don't really think that's that much of an issue to me. And I think I can't remember what Gandhi said about it, but I think he said something along similar lines. Is that I'm so used to for the past month of gaming, I'm really used to having to constantly compete with players for every OS, for every rocket, and that's not something that bothers me as much as it used to. And I think overall I'm okay with that. I think it would be done a little bit better if there was just a timer and you could see the times coming up. I think having literally a dashboard timer or a HUD timer would be something really cool for Halo 5 with fixed weapon spawns. I think fixed weapon spawns would actually play a little better in this game, but I'm not all in on fixed weapon spawns. I still think Halo 2 is the best, but that's just me. To conclude, I think to rank Halo 5 or to perceive Halo 5's final product in the scope of the other Halos, I think Halo 5 certainly had the potential to be as good as Halo 3, and I don't think we're going to get a good Halo when the game comes out. And I think with where I am now and what I know about this game, and having played the beta very extensively, this game is not going to be good. And I don't think it's going to be good on any level. I don't think it's good casually. I don't think it's good for montagers. I think it's boring. I think it's slow. I think it's random. And at the highest levels of play, that's all these problems within the game are just exasperated. And I played Fear itself. I played Ninja. I matched these people. I've literally played against some of the best Halo players in the world. I've out-BR'd. I've BR'd with some of these people. I've seen their map movement. And all it is just a fucking thruster fest. And it's just basically, it's every game to me is a toss-up or a big standoff. And that's just a waste of time. And I think that's goes against everything I know as a Halo player. And goes against what most Halo players should believe in. And that's not a CE Halo 2 thing. That's a Halo 3 thing. That's a Halo 4 thing. That's a Halo Reach thing. I think a lot of people are going to be very unhappy with this game, and I know my opinions may not be very popular, and I've heard pros say that they really love this game, but I don't agree at all. And I think by the second or third month of the game, the people who said they really like this game are going to be eating the shit out of their words. And you know what? I never want to condemn a game, and I certainly don't ever want to condemn a Halo 5 game. I mean, a Halo game, but I don't see this game ever. I hate to be negative, but with the information I have now and what I know about 343, I don't see this game coming out on top. To talk about something else to conclude on is the new direction. I think I expected Halo 5 to go in a different direction, and I was largely okay with that. I think that's what we need. I think the times of CE and the times of Halo 2 are firmly behind us, years behind us, and I think it's time to really leave those in the past. We have the Master Chief Collection, which I'm not getting into how much of a fail I think that is, but ideally we had those games back, and it was time to move on. Even though I don't necessarily feel that way about how broken Halo 2 is, but I think going in a different direction was something that Halo really needed. And I think as a developer, as a designer, going in a different direction doesn't involve just stealing what everyone else has already done from Destiny, from Call of Duty, from other FPSs. That's not what going in a new direction is. That's called copying material and bad business ethics. What I really wanted out of this game was something completely revolutionary, something that really was going to revive Halo and bring in new players, as well as keep the older players entertained. And I think that was something that was definitely very achievable. And I think that was something that people were really open to. And for me, Halo 5 was our last chance as a community, as a game, as a competitive community, as a casual community. And I think we're with the beta being finished and all done, I think we're readying up to put the final nails in our coffin as a community. And that's incredibly sad. And that's not like I'm going to quit Halo or anything. But when you get down to brass tacks, I'm not buying Halo 5, and I don't think any of you should buy Halo 5. For a number of reasons, not to mention that the game is absolute trash, and they didn't listen to any of us. And I'm not saying that everything in this game is bad. There's plenty of merit in this game, and I think that starts with the battle rifle and all that stuff that I talked about that was positive. But overall, this game is just not very good. And more than that, you should never buy a game you don't think is good. And that's what I did with Halo 4. I bought Halo 4 knowing it wasn't a good game because it was a Halo title, and I'm not doing that again. I think most of all, I'm not buying Halo 5 because of 343 as a company. They've proven time and time again that they're not going to fix what needs to really be fixed. They're doing it right now with the Master Chief Collection, and they did it for an entire year on Halo 4. They're just a bad company. They have bad business practices. They don't care. And when you really get down to what the problem is, they can't do their jobs. And I've seen nothing else to indicate otherwise in the Master Chief Collection and in Halo 4. And where I'm at right now to conclude is, I said this on a post in the Halo forum, I don't want another year of Halo limbo. I don't want another Halo 4 to where I'm getting promises that things are going to be fixed and they never get fixed, and getting patch after patch after patch that doesn't fix anything, and ultimately having a really unsatisfied feeling like I haven't eaten in a couple days. And that's how I felt about Halo 4. That's how I feel currently about the Master Chief Collection, and I'm not doing it again. And I'm not buying Halo 5. I'm not doing it. If you know what, and if the game gets released and I watch people stream it in a couple weeks, a couple months down the road, if the game is firmly solid and definitely is worth buying, then I'll entertain the idea of buying it. But I'm not buying this game when it comes out, and I'm not fucking pre-ordering it. And I think that for me personally, I'm done putting up with 3-4-3s ineptitude, and I think everyone should be done with it. And the only way big business learns is if you don't fucking give them money. And I think I'm all in on that. I'm not one to like try. I'm not going to start a hashtag trend. I'm not going to try and tell people what to do. But in my humble opinion, as someone who loves the Halo franchise, as someone who loves these games, as someone who grew up on these games, as someone who's been playing these games for the past 15 years. I don't think anyone should buy Halo 5, and that's where I'm going to cut it off. I hope you guys appreciate the time I put into this. Thank you to the people who gave me gameplay to use for this. I hope that it wasn't too boring on my end. I know I included some Halo CE and possibly some Halo 2. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys appreciate it. So please give me a like, and in the comment section, tell me what your favorite section was. What timestamps did you go to? What did you find most interesting? What did you agree with? What did you not agree with? And I will, as always, see you guys on the Master Chief Collection. So if you want to play with me, I got a couple gamer tags going on right now, but my main one is Skulls is Lit, and feel free to add that up. Remember the O in Skulls is a 0, and I will see you guys on Halo.